Thursday, June 4th, we're special council meeting. A roll call show that all councilors are present, and we have some new business to deal with. So I'm going to need a motion and a second on order 20-73, order authorizing the town manager to execute a municipal quitclaim deed to transfer the town's ownership interest in tax acquired property currently described as map 31-002 lot 028 69 Margin Street back to the prior owner of record Donald Kunkel, as fees have been paid in accordance with the town's redemption policy. Have a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks. Sophie, you have anything on this?
This is a situation where we foreclosed on property as a result of unpaid property tax. Shelley and Trish worked very hard with Mr. Kunkel and his family, and it took us a while, but yes, 2 days ago they came in with cashier's check and paid the $7,700 that we needed to give them the property back. So they will get it back free and clear of any town debt at this point. So all the sewer, all of the taxes have been paid, and 15% redemption fee.
Great, thank you. So I see Nancy's on, so I'm going to let Nancy do the vote. Roll call, please.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Kuntz?
In favor?
Councilor Osher?
In favor?
Councilor Perry?
In favor?
Councilor Maynard?
In favor?
Councilor Gardner?
Favor?
Councilor Robertson?
In favor?
And Councilor Grenier?
In favor.
Councilor Grenier?
In favor.
Terry?
Can you hear me?
He said in favor.
Oh, we did. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear him.
That's okay.
And the vote is 7 in favor and none opposed.
Great. We'll move on to order 20-74, order pursuant to the State of Maine Executive Order 53-A FY 1920 issued on May 26, 2020, declaring that the town of Orono is accepting excise tax online by mail with registrations that have previously expired during the current public health emergency to be registered no later than June 30th, 2020. Take a motion, please.
Move approval?
And a second.
Second.
All right, Sophie?
So this is a situation where when the public health emergency started, the first executive order that came out with regard to excise tax said that any registrations that expired during the public health emergency did not have to be renewed immediately, that they would not be due until 30 days after the public health emergency was declared over. The governor's office, I think after considerable lobbying on our behalf by Maine Municipal Association, issued Order 53A, which went back and said, if towns are accepting excise tax and their municipal officers declare it, that they can require people to register their vehicles at some date certain in the future. So if you would agree to tell people that they had to have their motor vehicles registered no later than June 30th, that will allow us to collect hopefully a little bit more excise tax before year end and help with some of this budget shortfall.
Sophie?
Yes.
So I think everybody was aware of the first executive order, but I doubt if anybody is aware of the revision of that executive order. How are we going to let the public know that that is the case if
So-
we pass this.
I have a couple of suggestions. The first one is social media, the website, the signboard out front are all kind of the go-tos. I also am going to ask Shelley to run the list of who should have registered. And if it's a reasonable list, I thought we could just send a postcard. Every once in a while, I have those, Tom.
Very often.
All right, any other questions on this? Do you think, Sophie, it would make sense putting it up on our board out in front of the fire?
The signboard, yeah.
No other questions or comments? I'll ask Nancy to take roll call vote on order 20-74.
Counselor Coons,
In favor? Sorry.
Counselor Osher,
In favor?
Counselor Perry,
In favor?
Counselor Maynard,
In favor?
Counselor Gardner,
Favor?
Counselor Robertson,
In favor?
and Counselor Grenier.
In favor.
And the vote is 7 in favor and there are none opposed.
Great, thanks, Nancy. Order 20-75, order certifying and countersigning the RSU 26 July 14, 2020 budget referendum warrant and notice of election. I'll take a motion, please.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Sophie?
So my incredibly capable town clerk let me know that the Secretary of State's office says that counselors can remotely sign the warrant for the election, school budget referendum election, as long as you talk about it publicly. So it's on here for you to talk about it publicly. I do not have said warrant at this point. But I do know that since absentee ballots are supposed to be available on June 10th, that it would make it really hard for me to wait till I got that to then put it on an agenda for you. So what I know is that you have never not called an election. You have never refused to call an election for the school. We have a sense of where the school budget is right now. And if you are comfortable passing this order now, it means that when we get the warrant, we can do remote signatures on it and get it back to the school so that they could have a legal election.
Sophie, how do you do a remote signature? What does that
That's
involve?
when Mitch or Josh get in their car and
Oh, okay. It's like a traveling signature.
yeah,
something
I still need original signatures on the notice, but
Okay.
most of the time you have to do it in front of people. They're saying as long as you talk about it and tell people you're going to do it, that's enough.
Okay.
Is this something we could download and scan to you?
Would you prefer that, Cindy?
It's just an option so that Mitch doesn't have to deal with my dogs.
Well, I think Mitch's going to have to deal with your dogs anyway, because I think I've got a parcel of stuff for you next week anyway.
I mean, it is a fair point, as long as it's not illegal. I mean, reducing person-to-person contact between staff.
So I can check. What I was told is it had to be an original signature. So if you remember, you have to do it's not just one warrant. You're signing, I think, 10 or 12 of them.
Right.
So let me check on that to see if there is. I'll ask Shelley to just ask the question, because it would be wonderful if we could just Google Doc it and let you put your PDF signature in there. That would be amazing.
So I would rather sign in person, and if they don't want to bring them around, I'd be glad to stop by and have somebody bring them outside or whatever.
I was going to say, you haven't been to town hall in so long, you are having withdrawals.
Sophie, do you know what the RSU is doing about the normal procedure where they have a public meeting to explain their budget prior to the vote?
So there was an executive order that came out late yesterday that talked a little bit about that. I don't know if their plans have changed based on that executive order, but the last thing I knew from Shelley was that they were still planning to have public meeting. They were just going to be limited to the number of people that could be in each room. So you go into the school and they essentially would have it streamed into multiple rooms and you'd limit the number of people in each room. They were going to we need to have a clerk or a voter registrar, a voter, an official town person in each one of those rooms for the count. So we had to, they were hoping to do it on the 15th and we had to say we couldn't do it on the 15th because that's the budget hearing and 3 of the people that would be official people won't be available. So including the town clerk.
Right.
So,
I don't think I've ever seen more than 50 people at their meeting, but they might draw a crowd this year.
my sense is, I think what the Secretary of State was telling Shelley is I think we had to have at least 3, which I don't know where they come up with the numbers, Tom. But the school was willing to work with us, and so we're just waiting. The order does give them, I think, if I read it correctly, a few options, and I don't know which one that they will choose. They've been doing a good job of trying really hard to stay transparent and open, you know, for people to be able to engage. So I'm just going to wait, and we will facilitate what they need.
Right, good.
Is this enough discussion or would you like more? We're good on discussion. If anyone doesn't have any other comments, I'll ask Nancy to take a roll call vote on Order 20-75.
Counselor Coons?
Favor?
Counselor Osher?
In favor?
Counselor Perry?
In favor?
Counselor Maynard?
In favor?
Counselor Gardner?
Favor?
Counselor Robertson?
In favor?
And Counselor Grenier.
In favor.
And the vote is 7 in favor and none opposed.
Awesome.
And just so you know, Cindy, Mitch says he loves your dog, that they are becoming great friends.
Well, I have a second one now, so but okay. I assume, even though it's not on here, that we need to adjourn the special council meeting and then open the workshop. So I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, just wave.
Aye.
Nancy, everybody was in favor. And now I will open the council workshop, and the first item on the budget is discussion of the water pollution control facility. And Joe Madigan's so excited he's here twice.
So Joe, I can't hear you. I'm going to see if Belle is allowing me to share my screen. Yes. Where am I? Well, that didn't work. Give me just a second. I'm sorry. Talk amongst yourselves. So, have I shared this with you? Did it come through?
No.
All right, let me try again.
So Tom, are you in your remote location today?
I am.
Lucky you.
Yeah. You got to do it when you can.
Absolutely.
So Joe and I are going to work on this together today. And I don't know, maybe, I don't know how much time this will take, but let's see what we can do. So WPCF actually has several different components. If I think about from the source to the end, we have a collection system that has approximately 23 miles of pipe. That would be mains that we're responsible for. 500 manholes and 4 pump stations. It flows into the plant, and there it goes into a headworks the plant is permitted to treat 1.84 million gallons a day. We treat it through secondary activated sludge, which I just got to find Joe here so I can see. There we go. There's we use ultraviolet light for disinfection, and because as the wastewater makes its way through the system, we actually end up with clean water coming out that discharges to the river, and we disinfect that with these banks of ultraviolet light, which I think all of the counselors have seen. And then on the other side, that's where the liquids go, and then the solids, after we have made them as small as we possibly can in terms of volume, we dewater that, and it goes in a truck that sludge goes in a truck to Juniper Ridge, where it helps to break down the landfill. So at times, the other major piece of our infrastructure is our CSO pipe, which we are permitted for, but that is what allows the system to kind of vent, if for no other better word, when it is overwhelmed by inflow. So high water events, snow, when the snow melts, heavy rains will allow infiltration and inflow into our system, which overwhelms it, and that pipe will send the water to the river. Joe, anything you want to add? Okay.
Joe is struggling with his connection, so I'm trying to help him via Slack at the moment.
Okay. So I'm going to assume I'm right then, and we're going to continue on. Does that sound okay with folks? Yes? Okay. So when we think about the WPCF, there are lots of, it's like a puzzle that all fits together. We have a collection system that we are required to maintain. If you don't maintain the collection system, what you end up with is sanitary sewer overflows. I'm sorry, I'm trying to do 2 things at once. Sanitary sewer overflows, or the system backing up into people's homes, which is never appreciated. That by maintaining it annually, we are able to enjoy some immunities from damages if the system backs up. If you don't maintain it appropriately, you lose those immunities, which can get very, very expensive very quickly. Process control, that is controlling the whole treatment process. So we have a laboratory that Joe uses to be able to check on the process on a regular basis, and we're constantly, it's a biological process, so we're constantly having to respond, because what comes in is not fixed. It changes based on how people are using the system and what they're discharging into the system. our discharge permit compliance. So we are permitted by the state, it's actually through a federal delegation, to be able to discharge, to operate the plant and to discharge into the river. Those permits come with reams of compliance directives. And so a lot of what we do is all aimed at making sure that we are complying. This is, we talk about the environment often, but this system is truly about trying to take a product and create the most environmentally friendly means of disposal. Joe and his team do a really good job, but there's an awful lot of permit compliance to make sure that we're bringing in the right amount, that we are discharging the appropriate levels or less, or in some cases more than what the reporting levels are. So that lab is heavily used. We have an individual that is actually assigned to the lab, spends most of their time there, and they are taking samples and testing for all of the things that we are required to report on, and also pulling maintenance samples to help Joe make decisions on how we need to manage the plant. It truly is a process. There are lots of mechanical systems. We have lots of pumps. We have lots of systems that take care of like the step screen, and we've got a generator that has to work. And so we keep people very busy just trying to keep good preventative maintenance on our mechanical systems, because if they fail, the system, it would cause problems. We have lots of just annual repairs and capital improvements in order to keep the system moving as it should. The sludge process, I think Joe can talk a little bit about dewatering and disposal of sludge, but that in and of itself, when the university is here, that can be something that we're doing 3 days a week, and that we've got just somebody assigned to taking care of that. And then, although the town office does a lot of billing and customer services, Joe and his team are responsible for all of the face-to-face contact with customers in terms of if they have a problem. If somebody isn't happy with their bill, most of the time it's Joe that has the initial contact with that, just because he understands the customer and what their general needs are most of the time. Are we still without Joe? All right,
We're working on Joe.
All right, we're gonna hope he trained me well here. So when we think about WPCF, we have the superintendent, Joe, and just a fun fact is that the actual license that allows us to operate the system is an individual license. So that system actually operates on Joe's license. There was a time when we had an individual in the lab with a lot of experience who also had a grade 5 license. He retired. So Joe's license is the only license right now that is high enough to operate this system. So we have 2 grade 3s. The plant requires a grade 4, and Joe has a grade 5. So one of the things that Joe, I think, is going to talk to you a little bit about is our succession planning here.
I think I'm back.
Hey, Joe, could you hear us while you were working?
Nope.
All right, so we're talking about personnel, and I was talking about the fun fact that we actually operate on your license.
Yep.
And that you're the only one with a grade 5.
Right, and we need a grade 4.
Yeah.
Minimum.
Yeah, you want to talk just a little bit about the succession planning?
Well, we've got some grade 3 operators here. Sophie and I, we've talked about this a few times, and we'd really like to bring one of our people forward. currently we have one is taking the advanced Sacramento course, and I think he's finished it. Of course, with the global pandemic, we can't even get anybody in to take a test if they were ready for it. So I'd like to get one of the grade 3 operators into a grade 4, and then they could start learning from me how to run, the administrative part.
So we have, since we met last, Joe and I actually did a little bit of structural change in the department. He has had 5 operators for a while, but what we did is we created leads in each of the 3 major areas of the plant. So we have a lead lab person who is responsible for making sure that the lab works, although every operator is cross-trained, so they have to be able to do lab work because they are on call, and weekend duty requires that they come in and do the labs. We have a lead mechanical person, so this is the person when something breaks that is in charge of making sure it gets fixed. They've taken on a little bit more responsibility, which has actually been working out very well, I think, for us. And then we have a lead,
Okay. No, sorry.
Yeah. We also have a lead collection system person. And then we have 2 new wastewater operators. They don't have their licenses yet. They're both working towards that. And then we have the shared position, which is vacant. We've had a lot of conversation about that. Does anybody need to talk about who we have working in the WPCF? Okay. So I normally start with revenues because they're the most important part of a budget, but I flipped Joe because I think his revenues are probably the easiest piece of his budget this year. So the FY21 budget is actually about $23,000 less than the FY20 budget. It's $1.6 million. And if you look at his budget, it's kind of interesting to see how much of it is on things that 27% of his budget funds his people, and another 36% is funding the debt from building the plant back in 2008.
Yes.
13% of his budget funds electricity and sludge tipping fees. And that's important because the electricity that Joe uses is, he uses massive amounts of it. And it's because we have blowers and fans and systems in place that are just use a lot of electricity. So, and then 9% of his budget, it actually is transferred to the town to pay for town overhead. So all of the clerk functions down front, the payroll, the HR, the finance, just general things that WPCF gets because they're part of the town that they don't then have to buy on their own. And then 15% of his budget pays for everything else. So all of his chemicals, all of his repairs, maintenance, postage, gas and diesel, the licensing, all of that. So there is not a lot of room to move in this budget. The thing that I would point out to you is that his sludge disposal costs went from $52,700 budgeted last year to $100,000 budgeted this year. And I'd like Joe to just talk to you a little bit about what that budget line does and why it's going up.
Sure. The Juniper Ridge, they looked at their costs And so I talked to Wayne Boyd in January, and he said they were going to end up at $55 a ton. And I said, Wayne, I can't do that right now because my budget changes in January. So he offered to go from $35 to $45 a ton in February until July. In July, it's going to go from $45 a ton to $55 a ton. And then it's going to be a 3% CPI in January, I think probably every year after that. So as their costs have gone up, they're passing them along to us.
So what was the cost prior to the increase in January?
We started out at $35 a ton,
Okay.
and we stayed that way. I mean, we've been hauling to them for, I don't know, 10 years probably. So they kept it that way for a long time. But I think they ended up going up on us. We were kind of, Old Town was a host community, and that's what kept our price down because we went in with them. And I think they've gone up on both of us now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Joe, and do we have a pretty stable tonnage that goes every week or two, or?
We put out about the same amount every year. I don't know. Hopefully it's going to be down now. Where the students aren't here or anything.
Yeah.
And we're using the aerobic digester because we're not wasting so much. It's working great. So we're trying to have some savings there, but usually when it gets cold and when the students are here, we just can't make it work.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, when the students are here and it's cold, you're traveling like 3 days a week, not like every week or so, right,
No,
Joe?
that's correct. 3 days a week. Yep.
Joe, when we visited the plant, I visited the plant with a bunch of kids
Yep.
a couple years ago.
I remember it well. Yeah.
Yeah. You said at one point that the sludge was used as a form of compost before it was landfilled. Is that something that's a possibility, or is it since there's not that much of it? Can you explain a little bit about what that was, and is that a viable alternative?
I'll be glad to, Cheryl. We composted sludge with Old Town for years. As a matter of fact, we built half of that compost facility over at Old Town. And when they decided on having a price increase, let me back up. The cost to compost got so expensive because they used wood chips and actually they were planer shavings in order to make this compost. So the cost of that got so expensive, we just looked around for a better deal, and Juniper Ridge landfill was it. And when we got this price increase, I talked to David Smith over in Old Town and asked him about, if we could go back to that. But after looking into records we had here, I mean, we were paying, it was costing us like $85 a ton to compost it. And we didn't realize any gain from the sale of that compost. As a matter of fact, they had trouble getting rid of it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I'm just wondering if maybe the time is right now, since more people are, looking to gardening and things like that. That they're, because I know that they're running out. Garden shops and things like that are running out. But I just was wondering if that was a different option, or maybe have just something to reduce that, because a 90% increase is a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
But
And
the,
especially this budget year,
right.
for
But
them
I
to
know-
raise it this budget year. Yeah.
But I know when we did that composting, we always told people to put it on the flower beds, not on their,
Right. Yeah.
not on their regular garden, their food
Right.
garden, because it
That
did
makes
come
sense.
from human waste.
Right.
And I think it was a Class B biosolids, not a Class A,
Hmm.
which meant there was more, there could be more pathogens in it.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Thank you, Joe. I was just
You're welcome.
curious.
Yep.
Other questions for Joe? Other things? You have the line items ahead of you. I was just putting this out here to spur your discussion on the information that you have.
Sophie, where does I mean, for a lack of a better opportune time to talk about it, when we discuss people using things that are disposable, I'm sure which has been increasing because of what it's created for us. But I probably a good time to, well, the people who are listening out there to say, even though it says it's flushable wipes, they're not flushable, and that increases our expenses.
It certainly does. Joe, I bet, would be passionate to talk about that.
Yes, I'd love to. We have been going to our Penobscot Street pump station a lot more to unplug pumps, and we've added special choppers that the Gorman Rupp has designed for those pumps. We've spent the money and put those choppers in, but even with that, we're usually going over twice a week to unplug the pumps. We've been having them come in on the weekends because both pumps are plugged up, so the station's in alarm and filling up. So yeah, the flushable wipes and PPE and stuff that people are flushing that doesn't belong there is really raising the havoc with us. So I guess for the people that are watching this on whatever media we're on, there's three things that should go down the toilet, and it's pee, poop, and paper, and that's it.
I would.
Thank you for asking that question, Terry.
Is that in relation to? Is that coming from like the apartment complexes, or is that just? I mean, does that particular pump station? What feeds into that?
That's that whole side of town, Sam.
Yeah.
So we get 3 apartment complexes plus Talmar Wood, Cross Apartments up there, that whole area.
Wow.
But not the university, right,
No,
Joe?
no, the university goes the other way.
I just think it's important to point out to our residents that even though it says flushable, that's a marketing thing. It's that gives. Do not do that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Terry.
I think we've got some people who might think that like pouring their bacon grease or their any kind of grease is okay, and we're starting to have some problems with that along some of the interceptor, correct, Joe?
Yes, we're getting more and more gobs of grease and mixed with the wipes. My guys are bringing them into me that they're picking out of the interceptor lines, and that's the start of something really bad.
Given that, I mean, right here I can see we have 11 people on, sort of involved with the Zoom thing, and I think when I last checked we had about 10 on Facebook. But rough math leaves several thousand other Orono residents not tuned in right now. Is there a way we can get this message out? Because to me, both as a counselor and as as a homeowner that is attached to our septic system, it's pretty important to get that message out, not to do that sort of thing because of the ramifications. Is there anything we could possibly do for that? Not to create any extra busy work.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, it's not busy work because Joe has a regular piece in the Observer that he doesn't even have to do the work anymore. He just tells Nancy it's time to put it in again. We also, during the pandemic, because we saw, a lot of people here, we ended up pushing out on Facebook a couple of times. So it's been on the website, Facebook. I don't know how to get more creative, Sam. So if somebody has an idea, we would love to hear it. We really would, because the industry just nationally is having a real struggle with things. People, I don't think people are trying to intentionally damage the system at all. I think they just don't understand. I think they're trying to do the right thing, and they're not understanding that wastewater system is pretty sensitive in both the collection side and the treatment side. Maybe this is a job for an acting troupe to put together a cute little PSA that we could put out there.
Some plants are doing, small movies just to highlight the problem.
Well, I think you already said the 3 Ps, right? Pee, poop, and paper. We could probably do something with that. There might be a jingle or something in there somewhere.
A picture of a backed up toilet would probably do the job pretty well too.
So, on that note, other questions or discussion around expenses?
I had one on, and I have to find it now.
Okay.
On something went up. Membership dues went up 370% or something.
Yes.
7%.
What was that? What is that all about? I have a little. Oh, 307 MEWEA membership.
Yeah, because I was mean and started making Joe pay for a portion of the MMA membership because he's getting the benefit. And we booked it against him for 2 years and then had to pull it back because we were making him go over. So the budget now reflects what we've been trying to do.
Okay, so that was you then, Sophie.
That's all my fault.
And the other thing was, it says advertising, but then you say, in case we need to have a public meeting, what does that mean usually? Like $350 for?
Was that in case we have a public meeting around our discharge license? Is that an old comment?
We have had some public meetings even for a project.
Oh, gotcha.
So I just like to carry a little bit in case we do that. Some projects we don't bother with. Projects that impact a lot of our residents, then we'd be more inclined to do that, like we did with the Interceptor project. And it doesn't cost a lot, but we need to get the advertising out there for them and to get them to come.
What? Wrong way. Okay. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
Anything else for Joe?
I think it's like any other person, Joe. I just want to personally say that I'm so glad that we have somebody of your capacity working for our city, or for our town, and you do an amazing job, and so do the people that work for you. And I think it should be recognized, and the community should be thankful that we have you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Derek.
And Joe, one more thing. Do you know when you'll be able to get that level 4 test? Have you had any indication when they're going to start doing that testing?
They just said that they're getting started with the wastewater testing starting into that. So they're probably playing a lot of catch up.
Okay, so you might have somebody then sooner than later, a stage four.
I'm hoping we can get one this winter.
Okay,
Right. Yeah.
all right, thank you.
You ready to continue?
Yep.
The expenses are the rosy picture of our presentation. Revenues, as you will recall, we increased rates last year. We increased, so we are now at $5.35 per 100 cubic feet, with a minimum billed usage of 1,200 cubic feet a quarter. So minimum quarterly bill is $64.20. That rate increase this year is helping us bring in an extra $8,561. And for people who remember, that was projected to be quite a bit higher. And the reason that it is not as high as we had hoped is because we are projecting declining use, and it is the trend of declining use is significant. Joe and I actually went all the way back to 2005 and pulled data, and I'm concerned because it wasn't so long ago, 8 years ago, that even with a lower $4.54, so almost $1 less per 100 cubic feet, that we were bringing $1.8 million a year in user fees in. So it's wonderful that people are reducing their use, their consumption for water, and that's a great thing, but we're really seeing it here. And Joe and I have been having conversations. I had a conference call I talked with Boyd Smith about water, and we're going to be getting together in the next week to really try to look into what these consumption rates are doing right now, because we're on a steady decline on sewer, on the water consumption, which is how we bill sewer. And then we got to the pandemic and it was holding pretty steady, and Boyd has seen a sharp decline. So we were trying to be reasonable in our projections. Again, I think I'm being pretty optimistic in these projections. The other place that we're losing money, we went from an interest rate of whopping 1.9% on our cash down to 0.4%. And while I hope this turns around in the coming year, it's going to take a while. So we are projecting that 0.4% through the fiscal year. We have been told by the first that they're going to do everything in their power to not drop that rate any lower than 0.4, but that's quite a hit. And who would have thought that there was anywhere you could go from 1.9? But and then we bring in the same $47.50 we're projecting for just miscellaneous expenses, and that's interest on late fees, late bills, and lien costs, and if we have to bill out because another entity wants us to go camera something for them, that's where that money usually comes from. Discussion here for folks?
So Sophie, can you kind of explain, if the use is going down, why are the expenses going up?
Sure. So both water and sewer are operations that have really high fixed costs. So the cost for us to treat the inflow to the plant is really based on a very small amount coming through. That the difference between 1.3 and 1.8 million gallons in a day is not noticeable in cost. When you look and you see the lion's share of our 85% of our budget is more about fixed costs, debt, insurance, personnel costs, licensing, so we're not going to see the savings of decreased amounts, except potentially in sludge, right, Joe?
Right.
In the tipping fee.
Because we get less water, we're getting less pounds coming in. So less pounds coming in means less pounds going out.
But that is a small piece when you look at, because we'll still have sludge, so you don't take it to zero. And electricity, we still have to move things through, and the system requires aeration, which are the fans, which are huge users of electricity. So when you look and you see just between debt and personnel costs, you're at a pretty high percentage of the total budget, which that's totally independent of what's coming into the plant. Did I answer your question, Cindy?
Well, I've
Yes.
got a couple questions. I mean, I remember this conversation last year, really. The same thing. It's like, how do you say this? It's great that there's less consumption. It's great that people are making these environmentally, conscious moves. That's a trend that's not going away, and that's the future. And so you certainly don't want to, you want to have that, but then we don't have a funding model that is sustainable at this rate. So how do we start exploring new funding, new revenue models for this? And also, this has to be happening everywhere, I would imagine, because I think this change, low flush toilets, all sorts of these, maneuvers have to be happening elsewhere. So what's the trend out there, I guess?
Yeah. So Sam, Joe and I aren't seeing it nationally quite as significant here in Orono. I think you'll find in many ways we're quite a bit more environmentally conscious. And I don't know if Joe's reaching for something or if you have thought.
Oh, I was just pulling up that rate survey of if I could find it.
We have one of the lowest rates in the state even now.
And I think the fact that the university is probably our biggest customer, they've done a lot on campus to reduce their water consumption. And that's got to be a big factor in Orono.
Yep, they are just shy of half of our use.
Yeah, they used to be what, 54%?
Yeah, I think
they've backed off through their water conservation. They've dropped down to like Sophie said, about 50%, 49%.
Yeah, well, that's good.
So I will tell you that in the interest of a pause on the general fund side, Joe and I are strongly recommending that, we put together a budget that we think we are confident that unless the use really drops and does not come back up, like, for example, if we didn't have a bunch of people come in the fall. But outside of that, I think this is a budget that we can live within. We're not suggesting a rate increase this year simply because of the economy. But I do think on your work plan, we should be talking about long-term sustainability for WPCF. And what you're going to see if you had a chance to look at the updated capital investment plan, we only put 4 years on that simply because we can't fund more without a major shift in the rate structure.
Sophie, do you know like approximately how many Orono residents are not on Orono's water and sewer? Like just are on just a well system?
That's a tough one, Cheryl,
I don't know.
because we've got, how many customers, Joe?
We've got 1,342 residential and 133 commercial customers. So we've got 1,775. No, 1,475 customers.
And are some on sewer but not on water? Like, is that?
Just a few.
Yeah, we've got, well, I just read them yesterday. There's like 3 or 4.
Okay.
There are more that
How
are
that-
on,
What's
there are
that?
more, there are more that are on water, like you and I, but not on sewer.
Yep.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. On water, but not on sewer. So we're not paying sewer bills
Right.
Yep.
here. Okay. And we're not that far out of town, really. I was just curious if what our residents, you know, how many of our residents are just not part of that system at all. So
I think I might be able to get you an estimate, Cheryl, but that's all it really would be, is a general estimate. I don't have like a hard data for that, but I can get you an estimate.
I was curious if what our composition was here in Orono.
Yeah. Yeah.
But mostly it's like the village area. You know, we go out as far as the country club. We don't go up Kelly Road. We do take in Dirigo Pines. But going the other way, I mean, we go clear to the university and out Park Street as far as the avenue.
Campus Crest? Sorry, the reserve, aren't
The
they on?
reserve, that's the, yep. And, you know, and then we take in Tough End, but as far as to get the outliers, it isn't worth it to put to extend the sewer to pick them up anyway. Does that help, Cheryl?
I was just wondering, you know, how many of our residents are just not participating in the, you know, WPCF in the first place, you know?
I think that there are definitely, I think it's a significant number, but not
enough to
yeah.
make a dent.
So so what we're suggesting at this point is that we kind of do a pause on WPCF and give ourselves a chance to see what's happening today, but then plan to come back likely in the fall. The thought would be is if we had to completely change rate structure, we would want to try to do that in the fall or the winter, even if it's for next year, so that we're not running into people getting notice of a rate increase like a month before you have to do it.
That makes sense.
Are folks okay with me moving on?
Yep.
Yes.
The operating budget, okay. So capital investments for FY21, which is just the budget year. Joe has a grit trailer, and I don't know if you want to take just a minute, Joe, and explain what that is, because I'm not sure people who haven't seen it would understand what we're talking about.
Sure. In the headworks, we have aerated grit chambers and classifiers, which take the grit, the sand out of the sewage, and we put it in this trailer. So it's damp in there all the time. The trailer was purchased in 2012, and it's when we bought it, it was a real nice, a real powder coated, but it just is rusting over time. So now it's 8 years old, and in that environment, things don't hold up very well. So we haul that grit over to Public Works and load it, dump it into the loader, which will dump it onto our truck, and we haul it in with the sludge.
So that would cost about $5,100, and we're suggesting that we take that from capital equipment, which is a reserve that has approximately $200,000 in it right now. I will tell you, Joe and I are very concerned about the press, so we're trying to limit our use of the capital equipment. So if he's asking for a trailer, you know, I just see rust. I don't necessarily know, but I know that he is very careful with that equipment reserve right now, just because we have a press that's going to come, either need to be changed out, or we think parts replaced. And that, when I say a press, that is where the sludge goes through and literally gets pressed so that the water comes out, so that we're not paying for water removal or as much water removal with the sludge. The capital facilities project is to replace the coil in the Headworks heat exchanger. And I don't know if you want to talk about that.
And once again, it's the atmosphere in the Headworks is quite corrosive. This was a copper coil that, which one is it? Yeah, it's our heater. It's our heat coil. So no, this is part of the recovery, the heat recovery plan that we put in a few years ago. So this is in front of the heater, and it's tied to another one so that the exhaust fan takes heat out of the air, pumps it over to this incoming fan, and preheats the air that comes into the building. But it's just rotted right out. But at $5,100, it becomes a capital item.
53.
53, excuse me. Yeah, I was looking the wrong place.
Yeah. So then as we go to capital infrastructure, Joe's job is to go in behind Rob. So before Rob is doing a road project, Joe's job is to go make sure that the sewer infrastructure is all set. And he's got, that looks like that would be 2 or 3 manhole replacements, Joe?
3, yes, for the North Main Street project, yeah.
Yep. So the timing on that really can't be changed, because Rob's going to come right along next spring and pave the road. And so we got to have the manholes fixed first. The second is the engineering for a main replacement on Westwood Drive. And that again is paired with the Public Works infrastructure plan for the drainage and paving on Westwood. So we'll do the engineering while the school is doing their project. Once their project is done and the big trucks are done on the road, we'll come in. Joe and Rob at the same time will do the main and the drainage fixes, and then Rob will pave it, which is the plan. So this one, we really need to have the engineering done this year so that we can fit in with Rob's plan down the road. Questions about Westwood? So
Westwood will be, excuse me.
Oh, go ahead.
Westwood will be from the school up, the lower part of it from the, where the school comes in. So it's right there by the school driveway. From there down, we've replaced in years past, but that piece right there from the high school yard, from the high school driveway to the end of Westwood is where that we want to change, what we want to fix.
And then Joe carries $20,000 for miscellaneous sewer improvements, and these are things like when they're doing the sewer flushing, they're checking they're cameraing the lines and they're looking at the manholes, he will find manholes that need to be repaired or lines that need to be fixed. And instead of coming back to you for $3,000 here or $4,000 there, we set aside up to $20,000 for him to use in a year. And I think that's worked really well. It's allowed us to be a little bit more strategic and go in and just take care of smaller things that we otherwise wouldn't have had funding for. And then the last issue is we've already talked to council about, but that's that Mill Street sanitary sewer separation project that we, that has gone out to bid along with his FY20 projects. And that's kind of where we are. We're planning to take those funds from the downtown transit oriented TIF district. Questions about this year's capital improvements?
How does the TIF funding work if this is a different?
So the TIF, Cindy, doesn't care if it is funding water or sewer. It just has to be infrastructure.
Okay, makes sense.
And I will tell you, that's something that Dave and I see as a huge assistance for the businesses in that corridor. Hopefully we'll fix some things for them if we can get this done.
I had a question about the grant that, did the grant, is it for this year? Did this just come in? How is that gonna work and impact this particular entity here?
Yeah, so the grant, I was planning to run the grant right off the grant fund and not actually have it in the WPCF fund because it is 100% grant funded project. So we can keep all of those grants in one place. But that is $20,000. We have signed the agreement with the engineer to begin that work. Right now, since there is no match, we don't see an issue with it impacting the budget for WPCF this year. And the grant funds, Cheryl, kind of live in their own world. And it allows us to cross fiscal years a lot easier when they're in that separate fund.
Okay.
Did I answer that question or did I?
Yeah, no, yes, thank you. And congratulations on the grant, Joe.
Thank you.
Hi, sorry, I've had internet issues and the audio keeps cutting out. I'm dealing with all kinds of stuff over here, but so forgive me if you've already discussed this, but did we already discuss the capital infrastructure needed to support growth box that's in there, referring to Bennett Road and Hillside Ave?
Nope. And Joe and I put that box there in hopes that you would ask that question.
Well, I want to hear about it. Tell me all about it.
Okay. The increase in size in the Bennett Road area, that Bennett Road area, that takes in the tech park, and comes down with a 15-inch line. Forest Avenue, Summer Forest Avenue comes clear across through Winter Haven and joins that with an 8-inch line. Winter Haven comes in there with an 8-inch line. So we're joining all these big lines together and then going to an 8-inch line. So when DOT did that big job out there, we put a pipe under the road, a 15-inch pipe under the road in anticipation of growth if we needed to upsize that 8-inch line. So that is, I keep trying to keep that somewhere near where we can remember that we need to do it, or that we might need to do it. The one on Hillside Street, that is at capacity right now. So that line, that 8-inch line on Hillside Street is fed by a 10-inch line that comes down from, Marsh Lane, all those down, all three of the housing projects come in there. Like I said, and plus Talmar Wood and but those lines go into an 8-inch line, and we calculate that is right at its max. And so if something goes on up on Park Street, we thought that we were going to be at the as I'm trying to think about, it's what did that trigger, Sophie? That
was the Orion project.
right, but it triggered something that was they would have to pay part of it.
Oh, the impact fee.
The impact fee there, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So that would trigger an impact fee, but we'd still, the impact fee I calculated when they were going to do Orion, it wasn't a whole lot of, it was $80,000 or something like that. And it still would leave us with a couple $100,000 to change that line. But they're there, and that Hillside Street is probably the biggest one, unless something changes up in the tech park.
Yeah, so for the benefit of those at home or who watch this later who don't have the materials we have, so what I hear you saying is we've got these areas around Bennick and Forest where there are buildable lots and there could be growth there, or in the tech park. We also have the Park Street corridor that council's been sort of looking at the long-term plan of how Park Street might develop. And in addition, we've been looking at some zoning changes that might add more housing units in that Hillside Road neighborhood off of North Main. So what I'm looking at here is sort of anticipating potential growth in those areas in the next 10 to 20 years is going to potentially cost us, by this estimate, around $700,000 in infrastructure to sustain and support that growth.
That's correct. Yep.
And are we at any kind of a point now where things are potentially dangerous? You said that the Hillside line is at capacity. Are we close, or are we inching closer to some sort of event that would be bad?
We're not really inching toward it yet. It's just if we add capacity up there, then we will bring that piece of pipe over capacity. So, and these are all engineers' estimates. So, we probably have a 20% margin because they always like to give themselves a little out. So, I think we're all right now. But if we put in a high water use up in that area, it's gonna bring that hillside to the front very quickly.
So Joe had been carrying these on the actual capital plan in previous years, and it was we were starting to do these exercises of, well, it's here, but we probably won't do that. And until there's something that triggers it. And when we started looking and forecasting out operations, rates, and capital plan, we got really nervous, and we wanted the capital plan this year to show you the things that absolutely had to be done. Like, Joe, could you talk for just a minute about the Mahaney subdivision? Because that's only $225,000 and it's in FY23, but that is a major problem for us right now.
Yeah, well, the Mahaney subdivision is built the whole thing's built in a swamp. So I've TV'd most of the lines in it. and everywhere you look, the water's dripping in, and that was in the summertime. So I don't know what it's doing in the wintertime, or in the spring when the flows are high. Rob's struggling with the, there's no drainage up there.
Could you kind of give me an address for the subdivision?
Oh, Mahaney would be like
Frost Lane,
up kind of behind the school.
Okay.
yeah, Aaron Lane, Frost Lane.
I had to learn all this stuff too, Cindy. Just saying.
So, I mean, we've looked at lining, we've looked at construction, we've looked at the manholes even. So that's that 225 is the engineer's estimate that comes off the CSO master plan. So that Mahaney Subdivision has been on the master plan, and that's where I get these projects, is right out of that.
So our thought is that, much like operations being a paused year, what's on the capital plan right now is fulfilling our obligations under the CSO master plan and trying to address Rob's plan as well, so that we don't end up having to go back over a new pavement or something like that. But there is more need that's just not here right now. And Joe and I really feel like we need to look long-term and have the rate discussion, because there's a lot more work that we could do, but we've got, it sounds like a lot of money. We've got a little over $1 million in reserves, but we're not putting any money in, or very little money in, and taking out chunks of, well, 500,000 in a couple of years, almost 200 this year, another 200 next year. No, it is, I think we need a larger conversation, and felt like this was a good opportunity for us to just kind of, it works this year, but we also, as much as WPCF stands on its own, it really folds in with what the rest of the town is doing. And Joe and I really feel like we need to be looking more holistically at it. Helpful? So that's what we have for you. Joe, was there anything else you wanted to add before people?
No, not unless somebody had questions. I didn't have anything to add. Oh.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments for Joe?
Nope.
Nope.
So the only thing I would update you on is that, and I think this illustrates the incredible team that we have down at WPCF and Joe's leadership, but we've been really struggling with pH, and I talked to you guys a little bit about that. And so they tried to set up a gravity bicarb setup to try to save some money and not have to buy a pump. And it didn't work. Well, it kind of worked, but then it got clogged up and didn't work. And his team went to the drawing board, literally, and created a whole new system with a pump. And we have, at this point, it should have solved it better, but at least we are legal at this point. And they are doing a great job. But the thought and the creativity that went into a solution so that they didn't have to go spend a ton of money to have somebody come in and build something for them was just really neat to see. And it was truly a team effort with lots of different skills at the table. It was great.
That's why I want to say again, Joe, I'm so glad, so happy that you that side, because you really are a knowledgeable man and you have a great staff with you, and I sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Terry.
Yep. We couldn't ask for a better person in the leadership position.
Ditto, all the way around.
Yep.
So that's all I've got on this budget. Do you have any direction for us, or are you okay with it? How do you want me to proceed?
I'm okay with it. I don't think you have a lot of places to go with it. But for a pause year, I think it's reasonable.
I agree. I also think that we've already got some tasks ahead of us next year in terms of looking at usage and rate, and also looking at these major capital projects and where we're going to go with that. But I think for this year, the budget looks fine to me.
I agree too. And I'm glad that there's some maintenance going on too, because if you have a rusted trailer and a rusted coil and things like that, they have to be, that has to happen. So that makes everything makes sense in this budget to me.
Just keep the bugs happy, Joe.
That's right.
You had me down there looking at the bugs yesterday. Was that yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday. Yep. And yeah, it is. He can tell a whole story about a family of bugs, even.
Hey, I've got a bunch
flocks.
up here on my deck that I'd be glad to send down to you.
So what I'm hearing, Joe, is that they're satisfied and that you don't need to come back on Monday. So you could have your regular weekend this weekend.
Okay, sounds good to me.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. So, Sophie, do you have any brief manager reports?
I do. I have two that I just want to, three. The first is that, just to let you know, the City of Brewer, we found out today, is not going to be opening their pool either. So just so you're aware. The second is that Mitch will be on the news tonight. They were here talking to him about the pool. So just so you're aware, I try to let you know when we're going to be on the news. The third is there has been some conversation about mask or face coverings and social distance with regard to the town. And I just wanted to take a minute because I reviewed it with my management team yet again. But we do have a policy that is very explicit around the steps that we expect our employees, our managers, and our visitors to take with regard to social distancing, hygiene, and face coverings. And so I don't spend forever talking to you about a 4-page policy. I will tell you that it mirrors all of the CDC guidance in terms of hygiene. It's just reiterated. It talks about the fact that people are required to maintain good social distance of 6 feet. And if they can't, we need to engineer something differently. And it talks about face coverings. And I just want to be really clear. People like to short term it as a mask, but we have to be careful with the town. A mask is actually personal protective equipment, and a face covering is part of the uniform. And that's what this policy says, that your face covering is part of the uniform, and we are requiring that you wear a face covering if you cannot maintain the good social distance, or if you're going into a private home or a business. And it extends to if you are on town time, if you're wearing a town uniform, or operating on town property, or operating a piece of town equipment. So if somebody has an assigned vehicle and they need to stop on the way home for something, they shouldn't be doing that. But if they did, my expectation, if they're getting out of something that says the town of Orono or is traceable back to the town of Orono, that they're following the rules. When we are, for example, we're not wearing a mask behind the glass partition at town office because CDC says we don't have to. However, when we go to open the door for somebody who's coming in, we have the staff person puts a mask on because you can't have 6 feet of separation and open a door. It's just not, it doesn't work. So, like I said, there have been questions. I did review it with staff and made it very clear that this is not an optional thing, and that if people don't follow the policy, that we will have to talk about discipline. So I want to let you know about that. The second thing is, in a day filled with chaos and not great news, we actually received some wonderful news that late this afternoon. I've already shared it with Cindy. As you will recall, you've heard about me going to depositions and representing the town in the lawsuit that Christopher French brought against the town, the Orono police chief, and 4 officers. We had filed for summary judgment, as did the defense. And we received the decision today that we prevailed on all counts. So that summary judgment is a really high bar, and the fact that it all just got thrown out is remarkable. But one of the things I will just say that highlights once again what an amazing police chief we have is it's easy to sit with 2020. Hindsight, it's 2020. You can look at something and say you should have done it this way, or you should have had X, or the policy, if it had just been worded a little bit differently, would have been even tougher. And we have a chief that instead of, we have a chief who took any of that feedback through the process and has already made considerable changes in the way we operate, which for me is the sign of an amazing leader, because technically we didn't do anything wrong, but he still was willing to change, which is good.
Sophie, I have a question on face coverings. Our businesses now that our local businesses are opening up again, and someone asked me this morning if she said we just don't have any guidance, but are they pretty much allowed to go, you can wear a face covering, you can't wear a face covering? I mean, for the most part, are they on their own as far as their own,
So I'm not sure I 100% understand, but let me try to take a stab at this. That people are confused about the executive orders and CDC guidance does not surprise me. That, I mean, it is not super simple to understand. Businesses should feel free to give Dave Mylan a call, because when they come up with nuanced questions that aren't really easy to give an answer to, Dave has been very good at getting answers and getting it back to people. As I understand it, Cheryl, people are supposed to be wearing face coverings when they go into businesses. And people are supposed to be wearing face coverings when they're in situations where they can't maintain 6 feet of social distance. I have made it very clear with my staff that we are not the COVID-19 police. We don't have the power to enforce it. And quite honestly, we have worked so hard to build good relationships and rapport in the community that we've been trying to just educate. But yeah, my understanding is, like in a restaurant, you're supposed to wear your face mask all the way till you get to your table, and then you can take it off.
I can tell you that is the case. Our guidance for food service, the people working, the staff should be wearing face coverings at all times while they're working. Customers are invited to wear their face coverings when they are not sitting at their table. So if they go up to the bathroom, or if they're walking into the restaurant, walking out, walking around. So at their table for eating and drinking, you can take it off, but in general should be wearing it when inside the building. And I will second what Sophie said about businesses should absolutely contact Dave. He's been right on top of every question that we've had over at the pub. We call him and we have answers, even if that means he's making some folks in Augusta angry. he's on it.
Orono is definitely well known in Augusta these days. But the other thing I would just say too, in case I'm not sure I was really clear, but all visitors, whether it's a vendor or anybody who's not normally in town hall, is required to wear a face covering when they come into town hall to try to just keep everybody safe.
Sophie, I just want to let you know that we had Ed dealt with Shelley today. Had to deal with the car and registration, and I was just kind of listening from a far part of the house, but she's amazing. Or that whole your staff are amazing in like saying we can do whatever we need to do to make sure your needs met, get your stuff taken care of, and with a cheerful attitude. So I totally appreciate that and appreciate the staff.
We are pretty fortunate. We've got a great team. We really do. Starts with council.
Sophie, I've got to sign off, so I will
Yeah. Thank
talk
you.
to you folks on Monday.
That's all I have.
Okay, so anybody else have any other comments before we go? All right.
Daddy, let go, Maxie.
We will see you on Monday.
See you later.